Today, I'm going to show you how to transform these three images into a steampunk-inspired design as an industrial science fiction composite in 5 easy steps. All of the images are available to download via the links in the description below. So if you're ready, let's do it. So step number 1 is prepping our canvas. We're going to select our subject and remove the background. And we're going to add those extra 2 images as well. So let's go ahead and do that first. Locate the files that you downloaded. Select these 2 files, click and drag over the canvas to add them as new layers. Now, if this isn't working on your operating system, go up to File and click on Open as Layers to add those images. Let's go ahead and turn these off for now. Grab your original image layer, duplicate it, and double click here. And let's rename this Select plus Mask. To select our subject and remove the background, we're going to use our foreground select tool, which is in this group of tools. And then to start the process of making the selection, we're going to create a rough outline by drawing around the outside of our subject. And if you want an in-depth tutorial on how the foreground select tool works and how to get the most out of it, I did a tutorial on this tool, which you can find via the link in the description below. Now, to complete this process of the selection, we need to go back to the beginning until you see that little yellow circle. Go ahead and click Enter or Return to start the next phase, which is targeting the subject by painting on our subject. So I'm going to go with a lower brush size here. I'm going to go down to around 180, and then I'm going to paint on the inside of our subject along the edge here. And I want to make sure I'm not going outside of that edge. Otherwise, that will begin targeting the background as part of the subject. Now, if the color of your brush stroke right now is not black, that's okay. It doesn't matter what color it is. It chose the color based on the foreground color that you have in that foreground swatch. Now let's go with a larger brush so we can finish off the targeting process here by painting on the inside now and get rid of the rest of that blue overlay. Once you're done with this part of the process, go ahead and click on the select button and GIMP will do its magic and make a selection of your subject. Depending on the speed of your computer, this could take a few seconds to a few minutes because this image file is really large. Now, to remove the background from this image layer, we're going to come over here and click here, and we're going to apply our layer mask to a selection. Once you click Add, it will remove that background. Now, it doesn't look like it because this image layer here is still turned on. Click here will turn it off. Let's go ahead and deselect by going up to Select and clicking on None. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Shift plus Control or Command plus A. Step number 2 is all about the canvas. We're going to resize the canvas and create a new background for our artwork. So let's start off by going up to Image and selecting Canvas Size. And since we want to customize both the width and the height, make sure this particular tool is not activated. So it should look like this. Type in 3000, click your Tab key twice. Type in 6000, click your Tab key once. And then we need to reposition our old canvas inside of the new canvas. So let's click and drag our subject down to right about there and go ahead and resize. Now I want to fit this canvas into my interface. So let's go up to View, Zoom, and click on Fit Image in Window. Keyboard shortcut is Shift plus Command or Control plus J. Now let's work on the background. We're going to double click on the original image layer here and call it Background. And what we're going to do is we're going to increase the size of the background really, really large. That way, this blue area here, I'm going to go ahead and turn this layer off. I just want this part of this image layer to be inside of this canvas. So we're going to scale it really large. And to help us out with that, we're going to grab our zoom tool with the letter Z, hold down your Command or Control key, and click a few times. And then you can come in here and activate your scale tool, which is Shift plus S for the keyboard shortcut, or you can just click on it and then click on your image to activate it. Then grab one of these corners and drag out to enlarge it. Now, I'm not sure if this background is filling in that entire canvas. So let's click on our opacity bar here in the middle somewhere. so you can actually see that canvas. And then you can click here to move it around. So I'm going to go right there and click scale. All right, let's zoom all the way back in and put that opacity all the way back up. The next thing I want to do is I want to darken up the background. So let's go up to colors, select curves. We're going to click right here, which is the blacks and the shadows. And we're going to pull that down to make it darker. I'm going to go really, really dark. So something like that. Go ahead and click OK. And then go ahead and turn on this layer again if you had it turned off previously. All right, step 3 is cutting open his head. So let's do that by grabbing the select plus mask layer, duplicating it, and let's right click and select apply layer mask. So now we just have our subject on that layer, and we can go ahead and begin the cutting process. And to do that, I'm going to use the free select tool, which can be activated with the letter F. Now, if you click and drag around, you're going to have the tool similar to the foreground select tool where you're drawing around your subject to get your selection. Now, that's not what I want to do. I want some jagged edges. I want straight edges. So we're going to click once and release our mouse. And then when you pull out, you're left with this anchor point and this line. Now I can click here to add another anchor point to, well, anchor that line or that point right there. And then I can continue adding zigzags across his head here to create the pattern that I want. And then you can click and drag around back to the beginning to complete that process. All right, we're going to add the selection to a layer mask again. And if we turn this layer off, the bottom part of his head has been removed. So let's go ahead and double click right here and let's call this the bottom. And let's go ahead and deselect and duplicate this layer. I'm going to go ahead and call this one top. And we're going to invert this color mask now so that we're left with a different portion of his head. So we're going to go up to colors and select invert. Now we should be left with just the top. Actually, it's the opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and rename these bottom and top. Let's go ahead and move the top above the bottom. And now there's the top and the bottom. All right, let's go ahead and move the top part of his head up and out of the way and rotate it a little bit. We're going to click right here on the image preview, and we're going to use our rotate tool to begin the rotation process. And we're going to go ahead and right click here and select rotate, or use Shift plus R, click on that top head, and then you can click and drag your mouse to begin rotating it. Go ahead and click here to rotate, and then with your move tool, you can then go ahead and move it into position. So I think I'll go right about there for now. I may need to adjust that later on, but I think right there should work out just fine for now. All right, one more thing I want to do with these two layers, and that is add a drop shadow to both layers. Let's start with the bottom layer. Make sure the image preview is selected. You're going to go up to filters, blur, actually light and shadow, sorry, and we're going to go into drop shadow from here. And I know the exact settings that I want to use, which are the same settings that I used on the previous project or the completed project that I did, or I should say GIMP knows the exact settings because it saved those settings under this preset window here. So if I click here, you're going to see my last used on March 10th, 2022. So if I click here, it's going to update the settings based on the settings that I used in that initial edit that I did. Now you can adjust these settings to anything you want. And the reason why I selected these settings was based on the direction of light for this particular image, which is from up here in the top right, and it's shining down here to the bottom left. And I know that based on the direction of the shadows under his chin here. Now you may be saying, well, the light or the shadow is opposite of that. It actually should be over here. The drop shadow should be over here to match that lighting. But I chose these settings to be the opposite of what the light is for that subject because I wanted to create tension. So for this particular composite, this design, the whole idea is tension, thinking, and I wanted to create that tension by doing the opposite of what I would normally do. So again, Based on your creative vision, you need to adjust your drop shadow settings based on what you want to create and the feeling and the moods that you want to create for your artwork. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab this image layer. I'm going to go up to filters and I'm going to click right here, repeat drop shadow, and it's going to apply those exact same settings again to this image layer. How cool is that? All right, so now we have step number 4, which is working on the next image of the composite, which is our cogs. I'm going to go ahead and double click here and call it cogs. Let's go ahead and turn that layer on. We're going to remove the background, rotate it, and move it into position and resize it. Let's start off by resizing with our scale tool, Shift+S, and then go ahead and click and drag this inside. And what I want to do is make sure that nothing is on the outside, or these cogs are not on the outside of the canvas here. So again, if you need to, drop that opacity so you can actually see if they're going to fit in there. Looks like they are, so I'm going to go ahead and click scale. And then let's actually move these below those 2 head layers. And let's use our rotate tool to rotate it into position. Again, this is going to be kind of hard to see, so let's go ahead and drop that opacity down. And we can't really move it up. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it here and then use my move tool to move it into position. Now, if you click and begin dragging a layer other than this cogs image layer, in your tool options, make sure you have move the active layer selected. Otherwise, it's going to select and move the layer that you click on. So I'm going to go ahead and move this into position, and I will rescale and re-rotate if needed. And it looks like I need to do both because, again, this side of the image is being cropped out. So I'm going to go back to my scale tool first. Actually, take that back. Rotate tool first, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate it a little bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and scale it down with the scale tool. Okay, I might need to rotate this one more time. I'm going to go ahead and grab my move tool and move this up. And let's see if we can rotate this just a little bit more. And let's move it over to the right. So right about there looks pretty good. Actually, I'm going to go back up and rescale it one more time. All right, so Rome was not built in a day. So sometimes you have to spend a little time to get it exactly the way you want. And I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the opacity. And now we're going to make a selection of the background. Now for this, it's going to be pretty easy to do because we have a solid black color. But if we zoom in here, you're going to notice there's some texture in there and some lighter colors. So it might be a little bit more difficult than I think it might be. So let's go ahead and grab our fuzzy select tool right here, or with the letter U, which is the keyboard shortcut. Now in the tool options, I have my threshold down to around 12 and I have draw mask turned on. And again, I do have another tutorial that explains this particular tool as well as 7 other selection tools that you can find via a link in the description below. I highly recommend watching those video tutorials to learn all about the selection tools in GIMP, because selecting in GIMP is an editing skill that you need to master in order to fulfill your creative vision. Anyways, let's go ahead and click here. And wow, that looks pretty cool. All right, so a lot of it has been selected. So that pink overlay represents the area being selected. And as you drag down slowly, it will begin increasing the amount of black colors being targeted in that image. And I see little specks around the cogs, and that's why I'm continuing to drag down ever so slowly to increase the selection of those colors. Once you're happy, go ahead and release your mouse button, and then you're left with your selection. And now we can come in here and apply a layer mask based on that selection again, and it should remove the background, but it didn't. It removed the cogs, and that's because we actually selected the cogs, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and deselect, and I'm going to show you how to invert that. Actually, I think we did this before, didn't we? We're going to go up to colors and click on invert, and boom, we are left with the cogs and no background. We just need to clean up our selection here, or our layer mask, I should say, because inside of these cogs here should not be black. You should be able to see through them. Plus, part of this cog here has been removed, so we need to add that back. Now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a selection on the inside here with that fuzzy select tool again, and I'm going to click once to make a selection, but it's selecting the entire layer mask or the pixels inside of it versus the actual pixels in the image layer. So we need to come over here and make sure we have our pixel layer preview selected, and now I can click here to add to that selection or make it part of the selection. And to add to the selection, we're going to hold down our shift key, and now if I click over here and click here, it will continue adding those pixels as part of the selection. So I'm going to go ahead and go around here and continue doing that, and then I'm going to show you a little trick for removing this part of the image so it's not visible. All right, so once you have everything added to your selection, come back over here and select your layer mask. Switch your foreground and background colors here so you have black set to the background color. Then you're going to go up to Edit and select Cut, or use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command or Control plus X, and boom, they are gone. How cool is that? All right, let's go ahead and deselect, and I'm going to grab my zoom tool here and zoom in. I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool, and now I'm going to paint with white to add this part back to the image. And if you go outside of the line a little bit like I did, then you can go ahead and switch your colors here to black on the foreground, and then you can remove or hide those pixels. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and navigate around real quick to see if I need to tweak this edit anymore, and it looks like I have a little bit right here. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we would be here all day if I try and make this perfect. I think you get the idea. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is adding our text overlay or working with this other image layer here. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and let's go ahead and zoom out. And what we need to do is we need to fill this image layer to fill the entire canvas. And we're going to use our rotate tool to do that. So Shift plus R. Oops, I need to go ahead and make sure I have that layer selected. So Shift plus R. And then we're going to come up here this time and type in 90 for the angle. Click your tab key, and that will rotate it 90 degrees. Go ahead and click rotate. And with our move tool, we're going to go ahead and move this up into position. All right, let's come up here to our blending mode and change it to, let's go with overlay. And I also want to drop the opacity because I find that too intense. So I think right around 50 or so looks pretty good. All right, so the last thing I want to do is adjust the tonal range to create a matte effect. I'm going to right click on the top layer here and select New from Visible. And it's going to take all these visible layers and merge them into one layer so we can apply our edit to this layer. So I'm going to go up to Colors and select Curves, and I'm going to drag the black point down just a little teeny tiny bit on the shadows and the blacks to add that anchor point. I'm going to grab my black point here and drag up to create that matte effect. How cool is that? I love it. All right, to continue elevating your GIMP editing skills, make sure to subscribe and check out that playlist for more compositing tutorials.